Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the soft, starlit world of ancient Egyptian lullabies, those gentle melodies that once hushed pharaohs and farmers alike into dreamland. Picture yourself on the banks of the Nile, the air warm and thick with the scent of papyrus reeds, a faint breeze carrying the hum of a distant song. The sky is a deep indigo, speckled with stars that seem to pulse like a heartbeat. You're lying on a woven mat, the kind every Egyptian household had, and someone nearby, a mother, a priest, maybe even a royal nursemaid, is singing something so soothing it feels like the river itself is rocking you to sleep. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive a night without nodding off to these tunes, because the Egyptians, they had relaxation down to an art form thousands of years before ASMR was a thing. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in ancient Egypt, around 1500 BCE, and the night is alive with sounds, not the chaotic buzz of modern cities, but a softer symphony. Crickets chirp in the reeds, the Nile laps gently against its banks, and somewhere a low, rhythmic chant begins. These are the lullabies of ancient Egypt, songs so old they predate the pyramids in some cases. They weren't just for kids. Adults, even pharaohs, relied on them to ease into sleep. The Egyptians believed sleep was a sacred act, a mini-death where your soul wandered the realm of the gods. A good lullaby wasn't just music, it was a ticket to divine protection. One mainstream fact historians agree on, these songs often invoked Bes, the quirky, lion-faced deity who guarded sleepers from evil spirits. His image was carved into headrests, and his name popped up in lyrics like a divine lullaby cameo. Now, imagine you're a noble in Thebes, sprawled on a linen-covered bed. A servant is singing a lullaby, her voice low and repetitive, almost hypnotic. The words are simple, something about the moon guiding your soul back by dawn. It's not just the melody that's soothing, it's the rhythm, mimicking the Nile's flow. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some lullabies were sung with a sistrum, a rattle-like instrument that sounded like a cross between wind chimes and a maraca. Archaeologists have found these in tombs, suggesting they weren't just for the living, but sent along to comfort the dead. Weird, right? Who brings a rattle to the afterlife? Probably the same folks who thought crocodile dung sunscreen was a vibe. More on that another night. You're probably wondering what these songs sounded like. Historians still argue whether they were more like chants or full-on melodies with complex scales. Some say they leaned on pentatonic scales, similar to what you'd hear in ancient flutes found in tombs. Others think they were closer to spoken poetry, heavy on repetition to bore you into sleep. Either way, the effect was the same. You're out cold before the singer hits the second verse. Picture yourself drifting off as the lyrics paint a journey down the Nile, your boat gliding past temples glowing under moonlight. The singer might mention Anuket, goddess of the river, her waters promising safety through the night. It's like the ancient version of a white noise machine, except instead of ocean waves, you get goddess-approved river vibes. Let's linger on that boat image. You're floating, the water cool beneath you, the stars above so bright they feel close enough to touch. The singer's voice weaves in stories of creation, maybe a line about Ra, the sun god, resting before his daily battle with the chaos serpent. It's not just a lullaby, it's a cultural download, embedding myths into your sleepy brain. Egyptians didn't mess around with bedtime. They saw it as a rehearsal for the afterlife, where you'd need to navigate the underworld without getting eaten by a demon. No pressure. The lullaby's job was to prep you for that journey, making sure your soul knew the script. If you're thinking, wow, that's a lot for a bedtime song, you're not wrong. But that's Egypt for you. Every nap was an epic quest. Now you're sinking deeper into that mat, the singer's voice fading as the Nile's rhythm takes over. Maybe she's shaking that sistrum, its jangle blending with the crickets. You're not just falling asleep, you're slipping into a world where gods and mortals mingle. The Egyptians didn't have Spotify, but they had something better, a culture that turned bedtime into a sacred ritual. By the time the song ends, you're long gone, dreaming of lotus flowers and starlit skies. And trust me, if you can't handle a sistrum serenade, you'd never survive a night in ancient Egypt. You're still in ancient Egypt, the Nile's gentle ripples lulling you as the night deepens. The air smells of damp earth and blooming lotus, and you're in a modest mud brick home, not some fancy pharaoh's palace. This is where regular Egyptians, farmers, weavers, the folks who kept the Nile Valley humming, wind down for the night. Their bedtime routines weren't just about crashing after a long day. They were a careful dance of habits meant to keep body, soul, and household safe until dawn. You're lying on a reed mat, a faint oil lamp flickering nearby, casting shadows that dance like spirits on the walls. The family around you is busy with their nightly rituals, and you're about to join them in this sleepy, soothing routine that's been fine-tuned over centuries. First, you notice the family washing up. Water from the Nile, stored in clay jars, is poured over hands and feet. It's not just about cleanliness, though, let's be real, after a day in the dusty fields, you'd want to rinse too. The Egyptians believed washing before bed cleansed you of spiritual impurities, the kind that might attract pesky demons while you slept. A mainstream historical fact. Archaeological digs show most homes had small basins for this exact purpose, often near the sleeping area. You splash cool water on your face, feeling the grit of the day dissolve. It's oddly refreshing, like hitting reset before you dive into dreamland. Now, here's a quirky tidbit. Some Egyptians rubbed their feet with a paste made from natron, a salty mineral used in mummification. Sounds weird, right? But they swore it kept bad spirits at bay and made your feet smell less like you'd been chasing goats all day. You try it, smearing the gritty paste on your soles, and it tingles like a DIY spa treatment from 1500 BCE. It's not exactly lavender lotion, but there's a charm to it, especially when the family's matriarch mutters a quick prayer to Bess, that lion-faced protector we met last section. Remember his goofy grin on those headrests? Yeah, he's basically the patron saint of good vibes and better sleep. You're settling onto your mat now, the woven reeds creaking under your weight. The family's routine continues with a light meal, nothing heavy, just some barley bread and maybe a sip of date wine. Eating before bed wasn't a big deal like it is now. They kept it simple to avoid, as one ancient text put it, stirring the stomach's chaos. You take a bite of the bread, dense and slightly nutty, and it's like eating a piece of the earth itself. The wine's sweet tang lingers, calming your nerves. Historians still argue whether these pre-bed snacks were more about comfort or ritual. Some say it was a way to honor household gods. Others think it was just a practical way to avoid midnight munchies. Either way, you're feeling cozy, like you're part of this ancient family's nightly rhythm. The room grows quieter as everyone prepares for sleep. You notice the mother braiding her daughter's hair, a nightly ritual to keep it tangle-free and, supposedly, to ward off bad dreams. The braids are tight, practical, but there's a tenderness to the act that makes you feel safe. Someone's humming, a faint echo of those lullabies from last section, maybe invoking the moon god Khonsu to watch over the night. You pull a linen sheet over yourself, thin but surprisingly warm against the evening chill. The lamp's flame is snuffed out, leaving only the glow of starlight through a small window. It's not pitch black. The Nile reflects the sky, giving the room a soft, silvery sheen. Here's a little joke to ease you along. Why did the Egyptians sleep so close to the Nile? Because they wanted to dream of swimming with the gods, not snoring with the goats. Seriously though, living by the river shaped everything, including how they rested. The sound of water was their white noise, a constant reminder that life flowed on, even in sleep. You're starting to feel it now, that pull towards slumber, as the family's murmurs fade. They've done this every night for generations. Wash, eat, pray, braid, sleep. It's a ritual as steady as the Nile itself, and you're caught in its current, drifting closer to dreams with every breath. You're gliding deeper into the night, still nestled in ancient Egypt, but now you're leaving the cozy mud brick homes behind. You're walking, barefoot, the sand cool under your toes, toward a looming stone structure glowing faintly under the moon. This is a dream temple, one of those sacred spots where Egyptians went to chase divine messages through their sleep. The air smells of incense, sharp and smoky, and the distant chant of priests hums like a lullaby. You're about to step into a world where dreams weren't just random brain static, but a hotline to the gods. The temple's walls are carved with eyes and stars, watching you as you approach, and you can't help but feel like you're about to eavesdrop on the cosmos. You step inside, the stone floor chilly against your feet. The priests, shaved heads gleaming, are busy with their rituals, lighting small fires in braziers that cast flickering shadows. These dream temples, or houses of life, were real. Historians know they existed in places like Saqqara and Memphis, where people came to sleep and seek visions. The mainstream fact here: Egyptians believed dreams could reveal divine will, and priests were trained to interpret them, like ancient therapists with a side of mysticism. You're guided to a low stone bench, draped with linen, and told to lie down. The priest hands you a clay cup of something warm and herbal. More on those sleep-inducing brews later. But for now, it tastes like licorice and earth, and it's already making your eyelids heavy. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some temples kept sacred animals, like cats or ibises, believed to carry divine messages. You glance over and spot a sleek black cat curled up nearby, its eyes glinting like it knows something you don't. The priests might have fed it milk mixed with herbs to bless your sleep, because apparently a holy cat's nap vibes were a big deal. You're trying not to laugh as the priest mutters a prayer over the cat, but honestly, if a feline blessing helps you snooze, who are you to judge? Egyptians loved their animals, and if a cat could get you closer to a god's DMs, you'd pet it and say thanks. The priest starts chanting, a low, rhythmic drone that feels like it's syncing with your heartbeat. He's invoking Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, asking him to guide your dreams. The Egyptians believed sleep was a portal, a place where you could meet deities or glimpse the future. You're instructed to focus on a question, maybe about your health or a looming decision, as you drift off. Historians still argue whether these dream sessions were more spiritual or psychological. Some say the priests were early psychologists, using suggestion to shape dreams. Others think the herbs and chants were just a fancy placebo. Either way, you're sinking into the bench, the incense wrapping around you like a warm blanket, and that cat's purring isn't helping you stay awake. Picture the scene. The temple's dark, save for those braziers, and the air feels thick with something bigger than you. Maybe it's the gods, maybe it's just the weight of belief. The priest sprinkles water on your forehead, a ritual cleansing to keep nightmares at bay. You're remembering that natron paste from last section, the one rubbed on feet to ward off spirits. This feels like the deluxe version, complete with a soundtrack. Here's a light joke for you. Why did the Egyptian dream in a temple? Because snoring at home didn't come with a god's Wi-Fi? The chant grows softer, and you're slipping into a dream, the kind where you're walking through a field of papyrus under a sky full of stars that looks suspiciously like Thoth's eyes. You're not just sleeping now, you're on a mission. The priests believed dreams could solve problems. Sick? Dream of Isis. Lost? Ask Anubis for directions. You're half expecting to see that cat in your dream, handing you a scroll with life advice. The temple's atmosphere is doing its job, pulling you deeper into a state where the line between awake and asleep blurs. The Egyptians nailed this vibe, part ritual, part theater, all designed to make you feel like your nap was a divine PowerPoint presentation. As the priest's voice fades, you're left with the hum of the temple, the cat's purr, and a sense that whatever you dream tonight, it's going to mean something. You're drifting deeper into ancient Egypt's nighttime world, leaving the dream temple's smoky incense behind. Now, you're stepping into a place few ever saw, the royal bedchamber of a pharaoh. The air is heavy with the scent of myrrh, and the room glows with the flicker of oil lamps, their light bouncing off polished alabaster walls. You're standing on a floor inlaid with lotus patterns, and before you is a massive bed, ebony wood, draped with linen so fine it feels like a whisper. This is no ordinary bedroom. It's a sanctuary where pharaohs, seen as living gods, chased sleep with rituals and quirks that make your modern mattress jealous. You're about to peek into their lavish, sometimes bizarre bedtime habits, and trust me, it's a lot fancier than your average Nile-side nap. You approach the bed, noticing its headrest, curved, carved with Bess's grinning face, just like those lullabies and natron rituals we talked about earlier. Pharaohs didn't mess around with sleep. It was a divine duty. A mainstream historical fact, royal beds were often elevated on platforms, symbolizing their closeness to the gods even in slumber. You climb up, feeling the cool linen against your skin, and notice a small table nearby holding a golden cup of spiced wine and a bowl of crushed herbs. The servants, silent, barefoot, move like shadows, arranging everything just so. One of them fans you with ostrich feathers, creating a breeze that smells faintly of the desert outside. It's over the top, sure, but when you're a living god, a little pampering comes with the gig. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some pharaohs slept with a bronze mirror under their headrest, believing it reflected bad dreams back to the underworld. You spot one, its surface polished to a gleam, tucked beneath the bed like a secret weapon. Imagine that, your Royal Highness snoring away, protected by a mirror that's basically a spiritual bouncer. You're tempted to chuckle, but the servant's serious expression stops you. They're sprinkling the bed with water infused with lotus petals, another ritual to keep your soul safe while it wanders. It's like the deluxe version of that Nile water wash from the commoners' homes, but with a floral twist that screams pharaoh vibes only. You're lying down now, the bed creaking under the weight of its gold inlays. The servants begin a soft chant, not quite a lullaby but close, invoking Ma'at, the goddess of balance, to keep your dreams harmonious. Historians still argue whether these royal sleep rituals were purely symbolic, or if pharaohs genuinely believed they'd meet gods in their dreams. Some say it was about reinforcing their divine status. Others think the herbs and wine were practical, knocking them out after a long day of ruling. Either way, you're feeling the effects. That wine was stronger than you expected, and the feather fan's rhythmic swoosh is lulling you deeper into the bed's embrace. Picture this. The room's walls are painted with scenes of the afterlife, stars and gods watching you from above. A servant places a small amulet, shaped like an ankh, under your headrest for extra protection. You're starting to get why pharaohs took sleep so seriously. It's not just rest, it's a nightly journey to prove you're worthy of divinity. Here's a little joke to keep things light. Why did the pharaoh need a fancy bed? Because even gods don't sleep on the floor with the scarabs. The chanting fades, replaced by the distant sound of the Nile, and you're sinking into the linen, the mirror beneath you supposedly keeping nightmares at bay. It's absurdly luxurious, but there's a method to the madness. Every detail, from the wine to the amulet, is designed to make sleep a royal event. You're almost gone now, the room blurring as the servants dim the lamps. The last thing you see is Bess's carved face, his tongue sticking out like he's mocking your modern sleep tracker. The pharaoh's life was intense, ruling, judging, being worshipped. But in this moment, it's just you, the bed, and a ritual so soothing it feels like cheating. The Egyptians knew how to make sleep an art form, and in this royal bedchamber, you're living their masterpiece. As the feather fan slows, you're slipping into a dream, wondering if you'll meet Ma'at or just snooze through the whole divine meeting. You've left the pharaoh's gilded bedchamber behind, and now you're back in the heart of ancient Egypt's humbler homes, where the Nile's gentle rhythm still hums in the background. You're in a small mud brick house, its walls smoothed with plaster and warmed by the glow of a single oil lamp. The air smells of baked bread and the faint, earthy tang of the river nearby. This is where everyday Egyptians, potters, farmers, weavers, settled in for the night. Their bedtime routines less flashy than a pharaoh's, but just as deliberate. You're lying on a simple reed mat, a woven blanket pulled up to your chin, and you're about to experience how these folks turned a hard day's work into a cozy, restful slumber. It's not glamorous, but there's a warmth here that feels like home, even thousands of years later. You start by joining the family in their evening wind-down. The mother is grinding barley with a stone pestle, prepping a small loaf for tomorrow, while the father checks the door's wooden bolt. Security was a big deal when you believed spirits roamed at night. A mainstream historical fact. Archaeological evidence from sites like Deir el-Medina shows that workers' homes had designated sleeping areas, often raised platforms with mats and headrests. You settle onto one of these, the mat surprisingly soft under your weight, though that curved headrest takes some getting used to. It's not a fluffy pillow, but it keeps your neck cool in the warm Egyptian night, and you're starting to see the appeal. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some families kept a small clay figurine of a hippopotamus near their sleeping area, believing it warded off nightmares. You spot one on a shelf, its chubby form painted with blue river patterns. Why a hippo? Because Taweret, the goddess with a hippo's head, was a protector of households and sleepers. You're half tempted to pat it for good luck, but the family's busy with their routine, so you just smile at the idea of a divine hippo watching over you. It's like having a spiritual guard dog, except it's a river beast with a toothy grin. Remember that Bess carving from the royal bedchamber? Same vibe, just a bit more aquatic. You're watching the family now as they finish their chores. A young boy is sweeping the floor with a palm frond broom, kicking up tiny clouds of dust that catch the lamplight. The mother pours Nile water into a shallow basin, and everyone takes turns washing their hands and faces, just like we saw in those earlier rituals. It's practical but sacred, a way to rinse off the day's chaos and prepare for the dream world. Historians still argue whether these nightly cleansings were more about hygiene or spirituality. Some say it was both, a way to keep body and soul in harmony. You splash your face, the cool water a relief after a day imagining yourself hauling reeds or shaping clay pots. It's simple, but it feels like a reset, like the Nile washing away the world's noise. The family gathers for a quick bedtime snack, flatbread and a few dried figs shared from a single clay plate. You take a fig, its sweetness bursting against the bread's hearty chew. It's not much, but it's enough to settle your stomach without weighing you down. The mother starts humming, a faint melody that feels like a cousin to those pharaoh lullabies we heard earlier. She's tucking the kids into their mats, braiding their hair to keep it neat through the night. Here's a light joke for you. Why did Egyptians braid before bed? So they wouldn't wake up looking like a sphinx's bad hair day. The humming grows softer, and you're pulling your blanket tighter, the reed mat creaking as you shift. The lamp's flame is snuffed out now, leaving the room bathed in starlight filtering through a small window. The Nile's murmur is louder here than in the temple or palace, a constant, soothing pulse that feels like the earth breathing. You're sinking deeper, the hippo figurine's silhouette barely visible in the dark. This routine, wash, eat, braid, hum, is so ingrained it feels like you've done it 1,000 times. The Egyptians didn't have fancy beds or mirrors like the pharaohs, but they had this, a nightly ritual that turned their little corner of the world into a safe haven. As the family's breathing slows, you're slipping into sleep, the Nile carrying you off like a boat under the stars. You're still nestled in the warm, starlit embrace of an ancient Egyptian night, the Nile's soft ripples a faint hum outside your mud brick home. The family around you is asleep, their steady breathing blending with the river's rhythm, but you're not quite there yet. Your attention drifts to a small clay jar on a shelf, its contents glowing faintly in the moonlight. This is where the Egyptians kept their sleep-inducing herbs, nature's answer to a restless night. You're about to explore how these folks used plants to drift off, turning their evenings into a botanical lullaby that could put even the most stubborn insomniac to sleep. The air smells faintly of something green and earthy, and you're curious to see what's in that jar. You sit up on your reed mat, careful not to wake the family, and tiptoe over to the shelf. The jar is unglazed, rough under your fingers, and inside are dried leaves and petals that crumble at your touch. A mainstream historical fact: Egyptians were master herbalists, using plants like mandrake and lotus for medicinal and ritual purposes, including sleep aids. You scoop out a pinch of what looks like blue lotus petals, their scent sweet and slightly narcotic. The family's matriarch probably steeped these in water or wine, creating a bedtime tea that promised dreams as vivid as the Nile itself. You imagine sipping it, the warmth spreading through you like a hug from the inside out. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Egyptians believed chamomile, which they called starflower, was blessed by the sun god Ra to calm restless souls. You spot a few dried chamomile buds in the jar, their tiny yellow centers like miniature suns. The idea was that drinking chamomile tea before bed aligned your spirit with Ra's journey through the night, keeping you safe until he rose again. It's a bit out there, like trusting a daisy to negotiate with a deity, but you're charmed by the thought. You're tempted to brew some yourself, but the family's already got a pot of water simmering over a small fire outside, likely prepped for their nightly herbal fix. Remember that lotus-scented water in the pharaoh's bedchamber? This is the commoner's version, just as potent but a lot less fancy. You're back on your mat now, imagining the process. The mother would have crushed the herbs with a pestle, maybe adding a drop of honey to mask the bitterness. You take a sip of the imaginary tea, and it's like drinking a meadow, floral, earthy, with a hint of sweetness that makes you sigh. Historians still argue whether these herbal concoctions were truly effective or just placebo wrapped in ritual. Some say the blue lotus had mild sedative properties, backed by chemical traces found in ancient vessels. Others think the act of drinking it, surrounded by family and prayers, was what really did the trick. Either way, you're feeling your shoulders relax, the weight of the day slipping away like sand through your fingers. Picture this: you're lying back, the mat creaking softly as the herbal scent fills the room. The family's asleep, but you can still hear the faint clink of the pestle from earlier, a reminder of the care put into this routine. Here's a light joke to ease you along. Why did the Egyptian drink lotus tea? Because counting sheep was too hard without actual sheep. The tea's warmth is spreading now, your eyelids growing heavy as the Nile's murmur weaves into the moment. The Egyptians didn't just toss and turn, they turned bedtime into a science, using plants to bridge the gap between waking and dreaming. You're starting to see why. There's something magical about trusting a flower to carry you to sleep. The room is dark now, save for the moonlight glinting off the jar. You're sinking deeper, the chamomile and lotus working their ancient magic. It's not just about the herbs, it's the whole vibe. The family's quiet trust in their rituals, the Nile's endless flow, the sense that even in sleep you're part of something bigger. You're drifting off, the clay jar fading into the shadows, and you can't help but feel a little jealous of these Egyptians. They didn't have apps or sleep trackers, but they had herbs, heart, and a river that sang them to sleep. As your eyes close, you're ready to dream, carried by the same plants that soothed a civilization. You shift in the warm, star-lit embrace of an ancient Egyptian night, the Nile's gentle ripples whispering a lullaby outside your mud-brick home. Your family is settling onto their reed mats, the faint aroma of chamomile and lotus tea still lingering from earlier. As the oil lamp flickers, casting dancing shadows across the walls, your gaze lands on a small, carved figure, a grinning, lion-faced man perched on a shelf. This is Bes, the quirky, cherished deity who's been guarding Egyptian sleepers for centuries, warding off nightmares and evil spirits. Tonight, you're stepping into the realm of mythical dream protectors, the divine guardians who ensured your soul's nightly journeys remained safe. The air grows heavy with anticipation, as if the room itself is waiting for these celestial sentinels to begin their watch. You shift on your mat, studying Bes's figure more closely. His tongue sticks out in a cheeky, almost comical expression that's oddly reassuring. Historically, Bes was a household favorite across ancient Egypt, especially revered for protecting children and those vulnerable in sleep. Unlike the grand, aloof gods of the temples, Bes was approachable, often shown dancing or wielding a tambourine to drive away malevolent forces. Think of him as the ancient world's nightlight, but instead of a soft glow, you've got a pint-sized lion man ready to brawl with any demon bold enough to disrupt your dreams. The matriarch of the house sets a small piece of bread near his statue, a quiet gesture of gratitude for his vigilance. It's a simple ritual, but it feels like a contract for peaceful slumber. Some Egyptians kept a sistrum, a rattle-like instrument, by their beds, believing its sharp jangle could scare off spirits if Bes needed a hand. You spot one hanging near the door, its metal discs catching the lamplight. It's the ancient equivalent of a burglar alarm, but instead of the authorities, it summons divine backup instead of the authorities. You resist the urge to give it a shake as the family begins their bedtime prayers. The prayers weave through the room, calling not just on Bes, but also on Taweret, the hippo-headed goddess you might recognize from that chubby figurine by the hearth. She's more than decoration. Her fierce, toothy grin marks her as a protector, particularly for children and expectant mothers. Her presence promises to chomp any nightmare that dares approach. Meanwhile, the father traces the eye of Horus on the wall with his finger, a potent symbol of protection, like an ancient "do not disturb" sign etched in faith. These weren't mere superstitions. They were layers of a spiritual defense system. Historians debate whether these rituals soothed the mind through belief or tapped into something more mystical. Were they a psychological balm or a direct line to the divine? Either way, the room feels safer, wrapped in an invisible shield woven by these guardians. The lamp's flame is snuffed out, plunging the space into a silvery wash of moonlight. The family's breathing slows, and you can almost hear Bes's tiny feet pattering about, tambourine at the ready. Here's a light-hearted twist. Why did Egyptians keep a sistrum by the bed? Because you can't trust a demon to respect your REM cycle. The prayers fade into the Nile's steady hum, and you sink deeper into your mat. That eye of Horus looms above, a celestial watchman, while the sistrum's faint jangle signals all is well. Egyptians didn't just lean on herbs and lullabies. They enlisted a divine security team, ensuring their dreams stayed free of spectral intruders. You're nearly asleep now, the quiet rhythm of the house blending with your slowing pulse. The family's faith in their protectors radiates a warmth that settles into your bones. This wasn't just about fearing the dark. It was about trusting that even in sleep, you were never alone. The Egyptians paired practical habits like herbal teas with a deep reliance on their mythical guardians, creating a recipe for restful nights despite the Nile's lurking crocodiles. As your eyes flutter shut, you picture Bes flashing a thumbs up, his grin a promise of undisturbed dreams. The last sound you hear is the sistrum's soft chime, a divine all clear, ushering you into a night of peace under the god's unwavering gaze. You're still lying on that reed mat, the Nile's soft whispers curling around you like a blanket, but your eyes are fixed upward, where the stars burn bright against the inky Egyptian sky. The air is warm, tinged with the scent of desert dust and distant lotus blooms, and you're sinking deeper into the ancient belief that sleep wasn't just a pause, it was a cosmic journey. The Egyptians didn't see the night sky as just a pretty backdrop. It was a living map, a celestial script tying their dreams to the god's grand plan. You're about to explore how they wove sleep into the rhythms of the stars, turning bedtime into a quiet ritual of aligning with the universe. The crickets hum, the river sighs, and you're ready to drift under this starry canopy. You shift slightly, feeling the mat's weave press into your back. Above, the constellation Saw, our Orion, gleams, its stars tracing the form of Osiris, god of rebirth. A mainstream historical fact, the Egyptians used star movements, especially the rising of Sirius, their Sopdek, to mark time, pinning their calendar to its pre-dawn appearance, which heralded the Nile's flood. But this wasn't just about crops or calendars. They believed the stars influenced sleep itself. Certain nights, when constellations aligned just right, were thought to bring dreams heavy with divine meaning. You're imagining a priest nearby, charting the sky on papyrus, muttering about how tonight's stellar lineup promises restful visions. It's like the ancient version of checking a sleep app, except instead of optimal REM, you're banking on a cosmic thumbs up from Osiris. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Egyptians slept with their heads pointed toward the pole star, believing it anchored their soul during sleep's wanderings. You glance around, wondering if this family's mats are aligned north. Hard to tell in the dark, but the idea's oddly charming. It's like they were syncing their dreams to a celestial Wi-Fi signal, hoping for a glitch-free connection to the gods. You're tempted to nudge your mat, but the thought alone feels like enough. Remember that bronze mirror under the pharaoh's bed, bouncing back bad dreams? This is the commoner's hack, less shiny, but just as hopeful. You settle back, the stars above feeling less like distant lights and more like old friends keeping watch. The air grows still, and you're picturing how the Egyptians tied their sleep to these cosmic cycles. Priests in temples like those we visited earlier would observe the stars, deciding which nights were best for dream incubation or rituals. Historians still argue whether this was pure spirituality or early science. Did the Egyptians really think stars shaped their dreams, or were they tracking patterns to understand human behavior? Some say it was both, a blend of faith and observation that made sleep feel like a partnership with the heavens. You're lying there, the mat creaking softly, and it's easy to buy into the idea. The stars don't just shine, they hum, their light pulsing in time with the Nile's flow, pulling you towards sleep like a gentle tide. Here's a light joke to keep things breezy. Why did the Egyptians sleep under the stars? Because Netflix hadn't invented Chill with the Gods yet. You smile, letting the thought fade as you trace Sopdet's glow with your eyes. The family around you is asleep. They're breathing a soft counterpoint to the river's murmur. They've entrusted their night to the sky, just as their ancestors did, believing the stars would guide their souls safely through the dark. You're starting to feel it too, that sense of being held by something bigger, like the universe itself is tucking you in. The pole star winks, steady and unyielding, and you imagine your dreams aligning with its quiet strength. The room is bathed in moonlight now, the stars filtering through a small window like a celestial lullaby. You're sinking deeper, the mat's weave fading from your awareness as the sky takes over. The Egyptians didn't just sleep, they surrendered to the cosmos, letting the stars steer their dreams. It's a humbling thought. You're one soul under an endless sky, yet somehow it feels personal, like the stars are shining just for you. As your eyelids droop, you're carried by the same celestial rhythm that soothed a civilization, the Nile's whisper blending with the stars' silent song. You're almost gone, drifting into a dream where the heavens themselves might whisper back. You're still nestled in that ancient Egyptian home, the Nile's gentle hum seeping through the walls as moonlight spills across your reed mat. The air carries a faint whiff of baked barley and the lingering sweetness of lotus tea from earlier. The family around you is fast asleep, their soft snores blending with the night's quiet pulse, but you're lingering on the edge of slumber, caught by the faint echo of a story being told. Tonight, you're diving into the soothing bedtime tales spun for ancient Egyptian children. Stories that weren't just for entertainment, but crafted to lull little ones into dreams while teaching them the ways of their world. These are the yarns that wrapped kids in comfort, and you're about to hear one unfold, as if the Nile itself is whispering it to you. You imagine sitting cross-legged on the mat, a child curled up beside you, eyes wide as the mother begins her tale. A mainstream historical fact, Egyptian bedtime stories often drew from myths, like the saga of Osiris and Isis, but were simplified for kids, focusing on themes of protection and balance. Tonight's story is about how the moon god Khonsu tricked a mischievous spirit into guarding a sleeping village. The mother's voice is low, rhythmic, painting a picture of a silvery moon sailing across the sky, its light keeping the Nile's monsters at bay. You're hooked, not just because it's calming, but because it feels like a secret passed down through generations, a story as old as the pyramids. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some tales included talking animals, like a clever ibis who outsmarted a crocodile to save a lost child. You picture the kid next to you giggling as the mother mimics the ibis's squawk, her hands fluttering like wings. It's not just cute, it's strategic, embedding lessons about the Nile's dangers while keeping things light enough for sleep. You're reminded of that hippo figurine of Taweret from earlier, guarding the hearth. This story's ibis feels like her feathered cousin, another protector woven into the night. The mother's voice dips lower, the words slowing, and you feel your own eyelids drooping, caught in the story's gentle spell. The tale unfolds. The ibis leads the child home under Khonsu's glow, dodging reeds and river shadows. The mother weaves in details, crickets chirping, the splash of a fish, that make you feel like you're there, trudging through the moonlit marsh. Historians still argue whether these stories were purely for comfort or a way to teach kids cultural values, like respecting the gods or fearing the Nile's perils. Some say they were early moral guides. Others think they were just a parent's trick to get kids to sleep before the roosters crowed. Either way, you're sinking into the mat, the story's rhythm rocking you like a boat on the river. The child beside you is already out, clutching a small linen doll, and you're not far behind. Here's a light joke to keep the vibe soft. Why did the ibis tell bedtime stories? Because crocodiles make terrible narrators. You smile, the mother's voice fading as she wraps up the tale. Khonsu rewards the ibis with a starry feather, and the village sleeps in peace. The story's not just a lullaby, it's a reminder that the world, even the scary bits, is under divine control. You pull your blanket closer, the mat creaking softly, and imagine the moon outside, watching over you, just like Khonsu in the story. The Egyptians knew how to craft tales that didn't just soothe, but built trust in the order of things. Gods, stars, river, all working together to keep the night safe. The room is quiet now, save for the family's breathing and the Nile's distant murmur. The story's done its job, wrapping you in a cocoon of calm, the ibis's victory lingering in your mind. These bedtime tales were Egypt's way of passing down wisdom while coaxing kids, and maybe adults like you, into dreams. You're slipping deeper, the moonlight through the window a soft echo of Khonsu's glow. The story's simplicity, its gentle cadence, feels like a gift from a civilization that understood the power of a good night's rest. As you drift off, you're half dreaming of that ibis, its starry feather glinting, guiding you into a sleep as peaceful as the Nile itself. You're still nestled in that ancient Egyptian home, the Nile's soft rhythm a constant companion as the night deepens around you. The reed mat beneath you feels familiar now, its weave a gentle reminder of the family sleeping nearby, their breaths mingling with the faint hum of crickets outside. But tonight, the quiet is broken by a distant pulse of music, drums, flutes, and voices carried on the warm breeze. You're about to join a festival night feast, one of those vibrant celebrations that lit up ancient Egyptian villages and kept everyone, from farmers to priests, up way past their usual bedtime. These feasts weren't just parties, they were sacred events that stirred the soul, and sometimes threw sleep schedules into chaos. You're slipping out the door, drawn to the glow of torches and the promise of a night unlike any other. You step into the village square, where the air buzzes with laughter and the clink of clay cups. Torches flicker, casting golden light on faces flushed with date wine and joy. A mainstream historical fact, festivals like the Feast of Opet, honoring the god Amun, were major events in ancient Egypt,
often involving food, music, and offerings that stretched into the early hours. You're handed a cup of sweet fermented barley beer, its tang sharp on your tongue, and a piece of flatbread stuffed with roasted fish. The crowd sways to a harpist's melody, and you're caught up in the energy, even as your body begs for the mat you left behind. These feasts were a communal exhale, a chance to honor the gods while gorging on life's pleasures. Here's a quirky tidbit. During some festivals, Egyptians ate honey-soaked cakes shaped like sacred symbols, like ankhs or lotus flowers, believing they carried divine blessings. You bite into one, the honey dripping down your chin, and it's so sweet it's almost dizzying. It's like eating a prayer, sticky and decadent, and you can't help but grin. You're reminded of that lotus tea from earlier, another sweet touch in Egypt's nightly rituals, but this cake feels like a celebration in your mouth. The crowd chants to Amun, and you join in, your voice lost in the chorus. It's loud, chaotic, and definitely not sleep-friendly, but there's a magic here that makes you forget the hour.
The feast is in full swing now. Dancers twirl, their linen skirts catching the torchlight, while children dart through the crowd, stealing extra cakes. You're swaying a bit, maybe from the beer, or maybe from the late hour, but the energy keeps you upright. Historians still argue whether these late-night feasts disrupted sleep patterns or were a deliberate way to connect with the divine, even at the cost of rest. Some say the exhaustion that followed was part of the ritual, a surrender to the god's rhythm. Others think Egyptians just loved a good party and dealt with the yawns later. Either way, you're feeling the pull of both, the festival's thrill and the distant call of your mat, promising sleep once the drums finally quiet. Here's a light joke to keep things breezy. Why did the Egyptians stay up for the feast? Because missing honey cakes was a sin even Ra couldn't forgive. You laugh, taking another sip of beer as a priest pours wine into a fire, the flames flaring in honor of Amun. The crowd cheers, and you're swept along, dancing clumsily with a weaver who smells faintly of flax. The night feels endless, the stars above spinning in time with the music. But you're starting to notice the yawns creeping in, the way some villagers slip away to their homes, ready to crash after hours of revelry. The Egyptians knew how to balance this. Feast hard, then sleep harder. You're back at the house now, the festival's echoes fading as you settle onto your mat. The Nile's murmur is louder than the drums now, a soothing counterpoint to the night's chaos. Your stomach's full of fish and honey, your head buzzing with beer and starlight. These feasts were a reminder that life wasn't just about survival. It was about joy, community, and the gods who tied it all together. You pull the blanket over you, the mat creaking softly, and feel the festival's warmth linger in your bones. As the village quiets, you're drifting off, carried by the memory of torchlight and the Nile's endless song, ready to dream of feasts under the stars. You're drifting off, the mat creaking under your weight, when your mind snags on those dream books again. These weren't just dusty scrolls gathering cobwebs in some priest's back room. They were the real deal, a go-to guide for making sense of the chaos that played out behind your eyelids. Picture this. You wake up, heart pounding, because you just dreamed of a hawk soaring over a flooded field. You stumble to the family elder, or maybe a local priest, bleary-eyed, and ask, "What's that mean?" They'd unroll the papyrus, squint at the hieroglyphs, and tell you it's a sign of victory, or maybe a heads up about a soggy harvest. These books cataloged hundreds of dream scenarios, linking symbols to outcomes like a divine cheat sheet. Crocodile? Trouble's brewing. Bread? Good fortune's on the way. It's like the Egyptians invented the original if this, then that algorithm, only it ran on faith and starlight instead of code. The cool thing? These dream books weren't vague fortune cookie nonsense. They were specific, practical, and tied to the rhythms of Egyptian life. Floods, harvests, battles, the works. You're lying there, the distant croak of a frog cutting through the night, and it hits you. This wasn't just superstition, it was a system. Priests, trained in the art of interpretation, were the gatekeepers. But some scholars reckon regular folks might have memorized the basics too. Imagine your neighbor muttering about her dream of a snake, convinced it's a warning about that shady trader down by the docks. Dreams weren't private escapades, they were communal currency, traded over breakfast like gossip. Now, let's crank up the weirdness. You've heard about incubation, right? That quirky habit where Egyptians would bunk down in temples to score a dream straight from the gods? It's next-level commitment. You're picturing yourself trekking to a shrine, maybe the Grand Temple of Amun, or a smaller setup for Hathor. Sandals slapping against stone, the air heavy with myrrh. You'd lie there, wrapped in a linen cloak, the flicker of oil lamps painting shadows on the walls, waiting for a vision. The idea was simple: sacred space, sacred sleep. If the gods were going to whisper secrets, they'd do it where their power hums strongest. This wasn't a casual nap. You might have fasted first, chanted prayers, or left offerings, think bread or a vial of oil to sweeten the deal. Then, as the night deepened, you'd drift off, hoping for a dream of healing, say if your leg's been acting up, or guidance, should you marry that potter's kid. Come morning, the priests would decode it, their voices low and deliberate, telling you the gods approved your plans, or didn't. You're back on your mat now, the Nile's murmur a faint lullaby, and you can't help but grin at the thought. It's like plugging into divine Wi-Fi, downloading updates from the cosmos while you snore. Here's where things get sticky, and scholars start bickering like ibises over a fish. Were these dream interpretations legit, or just a fancy way to feel in control of a chaotic world? You're staring at the ceiling, well, the thatch above your mat, and mulling it over. On one side, some historians argue there's real wisdom buried in those dream books. The symbols weren't random. They mirrored Egypt's culture and environment, rivers, animals, stars, so maybe they tapped into a shared psyche. Dream of a lotus blooming? That's renewal, tied to the Nile's life-giving floods. It's almost psychological, a proto-therapy session courtesy of Osiris. But then there's the skeptic camp, rolling their eyes and saying it's all bunk. To them, dream divination was a comforting fairy tale, a way to slap meaning on the meaningless. You dreamed of a cat because one scratched you yesterday, not because Bastet's sending a memo. Plus, how accurate could it be? If you followed the dream book and avoided the docks after that snake vision, but nothing happened, did it work? Or did you just waste a day? You're chuckling now, the night's stillness broken by your own amusement, because it's a fair point. Maybe it was less about precision and more about hope, a bedtime story to keep the dark at bay. And who even used these dream books? That's another tussle. Were they locked away in temple libraries for the linen-clad elite, or did they trickle down to the mud brick masses? You're betting on the latter. Egyptians loved their gods too much to gatekeep something this juicy. The fisherman down the lane probably had his own take on what a net full of fish meant, dream book or not. Either way, the debate's alive, and you're caught in the middle, half asleep and wondering if your own dreams deserve a second look. Speaking of dreams, here's one for you. Why did the Egyptian wake up panicked after dreaming he'd lost his chariot in a sandstorm? Because even in sleep, parking in Memphis was a nightmare. You stifle a laugh, the mat shifting under you, and let the absurdity settle. The Nile's steady hum pulls you back, a reminder that life here was practical, even when it got mystical. Dreams might have guided pharaohs to war or farmers to plant, but they could still trip over the everyday stuff, like where you left your ride. You're sinking deeper now, the weight of the night pressing your shoulders into the mat. The Egyptians didn't just decode dreams for kicks, they lived by them. A pharaoh might delay a campaign because he saw a storm in his sleep. A healer might brew a remedy after dreaming of a herb. It's wild to think your fate could hinge on something as slippery as a dream. But that's Egypt for you. Gods and mortals tangled up in a cosmic dance. The air's cooler now, the moonlight softer, and you're struck by how personal it felt. Every dream was a thread tying you to the divine, a whisper that the universe cared. Sensory check. The reeds beneath you are rough but familiar. The distant splash of a fish in the river, a quiet heartbeat. The family's snores weave through the dark, and you're almost there. teetering on sleep's edge. Dreams were Egypt's way of wrestling with the unknown, a nightly leap of faith. You're wondering what you'll dream tonight. Something grand, like a falcon's flight, or mundane, like spilling beer at the market. Doesn't matter. Like the Egyptians, you're ready to listen, to see what the night reveals. The stars wink above, the Nile sighs, and you're gone, carried off on the same current that guided a civilization. You're still on that reed mat, the cool night air brushing your skin, scented with the faint earthiness of baked barley and the floral sweetness of lotus tea lingering from dinner. The family around you is lost in sleep, their soft snores a quiet chorus against the Nile's endless murmur. But you're not quite ready to drift off. There's a hum in the air, a whisper of something more, a tale unfolding as if the river itself is spinning it for you. Tonight, we're digging deeper into the soothing bedtime stories ancient Egyptian parents told their children, tales that did double duty, sending little ones off to dreamland while planting seeds of wisdom about their world. Picture yourself sitting cross-legged, a wide-eyed child nestled beside you, clutching a small linen doll as the mother begins her story. These tales often pulled from the grand myths, like the epic drama of Osiris and Isis, but were pared down for kids, focusing on simple, comforting themes like protection and harmony. Tonight, she's telling a story about the jackal-headed god Anubis, who outsmarted a sneaky desert spirit trying to steal a farmer's dreams. Her voice is a soft, rhythmic chant, painting the scene. Anubis prowling under a crescent moon, his shadow long and lean against the dunes, the air sharp with the scent of dry sand and distant myrrh.
Here's a fun twist. Egyptian stories loved a good talking animal, and this one's no exception. Enter a chatty falcon, Horus's feathered spy, who squawks warnings to Anubis about the spirit's tricks. You can almost hear the kid giggling as the mother flaps her arms, mimicking the falcon's shrill cry, her linen sleeves rustling. It's not just adorable, it's clever, slipping in lessons about vigilance and the desert's dangers while keeping the mood light enough for sleep. You think back to that Taweret figurine by the hearth, the hippo goddess standing guard. This falcon feels like her airborne kin, another layer of protection stitched into the night. The story rolls on. Anubis and the falcon track the spirit through a maze of moonlit dunes, the cricket's chirps punctuating the silence, the occasional howl of a distant jackal adding a shiver of excitement. The mother's voice slows, her words a gentle lull, and you feel yourself sinking deeper into the mat, the tale's rhythm rocking you like a skiff on the Nile. Historians love to debate these stories' purpose. Were they just cozy bedtime rituals, or subtle tools to teach kids about the gods in the wild lands beyond the village? Some argue they were moral primers. Others say they were a parent's desperate bid for quiet before dawn. Whatever the truth, you're hooked. The child beside you already snoring softly, and sleep's tugging at you too. Here's a little chuckle to keep it breezy. Why did the falcon help Anubis? Because spirits are terrible at keeping secrets. You grin as the mother wraps it up. Anubis traps the spirit in a jar of starlight, and the farmer's dreams are safe again. It's a lullaby with a point. The world's chaos is tamed by the gods, even in the dead of night. You pull your blanket tighter, the mat creaking beneath you, and glance at the sliver of moonlight through the window, imagining Anubis out there, keeping watch. The Egyptians had a knack for stories that didn't just soothe, but built faith in a cosmos where everything, gods, stars, river, worked in sync to guard the night. The room's hushed now, just the family's breaths and the Nile's faint song. The tale's woven its magic, cocooning you in calm, Anubis's triumph lingering like a quiet promise. These bedtime stories were Egypt's gift to its children, and maybe to you, easing you into dreams with a mix of wonder and trust. You're slipping under, the moonlight a soft echo of the story's glow, half dreaming of that falcon soaring above, guiding you into a sleep as deep and peaceful as the river itself. But wait, the night's not done with you yet. You're still on that mat. The Nile's whisper steady in your ears when a new sound cuts through the stillness. A distant thrum of drums, the trill of flutes, voices rising on the warm breeze. Your eyes snap open, curiosity winning over sleep. It's a festival night, feast calling you. One of those electric celebrations that turned ancient Egyptian villages into hubs of life, keeping everyone, farmers, weavers, even priests, up long past their usual hours. These weren't just parties, they were holy chaos, a chance to connect with the divine, even if it meant yawning through tomorrow. You're off the mat, slipping out the door, drawn to the torchlit promise of something wild. You step into the village square, and it's a sensory explosion. Torches crackle, their golden light dancing across faces flushed with date wine and glee. The air thick with the clatter of clay cups and bursts of laughter. Festivals like the Feast of Hathor, goddess of music, love, and plenty, were big deals in ancient Egypt, stretching into the wee hours with food, song, and offerings. Someone presses a cup of fermented barley beer into your hand, its sharp tang waking your tongue, followed by a warm flatbread oozing with roasted duck fat. The crowd pulses to a drummer's beat, and you're swept in, your sleepy body protesting, but your spirit wide awake. This is Egypt unwinding, honoring the gods with every bite and shout. Here's a tasty quirk. Festival goers scarf down cakes soaked in honey and shaped like sacred symbols. Think little ibises or Hathor sistrum, believed to carry divine favor. You snag one, the honey sticking to your fingers, its sweetness so rich it's almost a buzz. It's like chewing on a blessing, a gooey link to the goddess herself, and you can't help but smirk, licking the drips off your chin. It reminds you of that lotus tea from earlier, but this is louder, bolder, a party in your mouth. The crowd roars a chant to Hathor, and you join in, your voice swallowed by the din. Sleep's a distant memory now. This chaos is too alive to resist. The feast is a whirlwind. Dancers spin, their linen kilts flashing in the firelight, while kids weave through legs nabbing extra cakes with sticky hands. You're swaying, maybe from the beer or the late hour, but the rhythm holds you up. Scholars still bicker over these all-nighters. Did they throw sleep cycles into chaos? Or was the bleary-eyed aftermath part of the spiritual deal, a surrender to the god's tempo? Some say it was pure devotion. Others reckon Egyptians just couldn't say no to a good time. You feel both, the thrill of the drums and the mat's faint call, promising rest when the noise finally fades.
A quick laugh to keep it light, because Hathor wouldn't take a beat for an answer. You chuckle, sipping more beer as a priestess tosses myrrh into a fire, the flames leaping high, perfuming the air with smoky sweetness. The crowd hoots, and you're pulled into a clumsy dance with a potter, his hands gritty with clay. The stars spin overhead, the night stretching on forever. But you spot a few villagers peeling off, stumbling home to crash, and you know the end's near. Egyptians mastered this balance. Revel hard, then collapse into sleep like it's a second offering. You're back at the house now, the festival's hum fading as you sink onto your mat. The Nile's song drowns out the last drum beats, a cool balm after the night's heat. Your belly stuffed with duck and honey, your head swimming with beer and starlight. These feasts weren't just excess, they were life, community, and the gods all rolled into one messy, joyful bundle. You tug the blanket over you, the mat groaning softly, the feast's glow still warming your bones. As the village hushes, you're drifting off, carried by torchlight memories and the Nile's steady croon, ready to dream of dances under the stars. You're back on that familiar reed mat, the Nile's gentle ripples a soft undercurrent to the night, the air still carrying the faint buzz of festival drums from the village square. Your body's heavy with the warmth of honey cakes and barley beer, but your mind's drifting to a stranger, more mystical place,
the world of ancient Egyptian dream divination. The moonlight filters through the small window, casting silvery patterns on the mud brick walls, and you're about to explore how these folks believe their dreams could predict the future, solve problems, or even chat with the gods. It's not just sleep, it's a cosmic hotline, and you're holding the receiver, ready to hear what the night has to say. You shift on the mat, the woven reeds creaking softly, and imagine waking up with a vivid dream still buzzing in your head. Say, a vision of a falcon soaring over a golden field. In ancient Egypt, that wasn't just a random brain flicker. It was a message, maybe from Horus himself. A mainstream historical fact: Egyptians used dream books, papyrus scrolls listing hundreds of dream symbols and their meanings, to decode these nightly visions. You picture yourself trudging to a local priest, the morning sun hot on your neck, to ask what that falcon means. The priest might unroll a scroll and declare it a sign of victory or divine favor, urging you to make an offering to Horus just to be safe. These books were like an ancient Google for the subconscious, guiding everyone from farmers to pharaohs through the murky waters of sleep.
Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Egyptians believed dreaming of certain foods, like bread or fish, could predict prosperity, or warn of betrayal if the fish was rotten. You're chuckling at the thought of stressing over a dream about spoiled tilapia, but it makes sense in a world where the Nile's bounty shaped life and dreams alike. You're reminded of that hippo figurine of Taweret from earlier, guarding the hearth. These dream symbols feel like her symbolic cousins, weaving protection and meaning into the night. You're lying there, the mat's texture grounding you, wondering if last night's dream of a lotus flower means good fortune or just too much festival wine. The process wasn't random guesswork. You're imagining a priest in a nearby temple, maybe one like the dream temples we visited, hunched over a scroll under flickering lamplight. He'd match your dream to entries in the book: falcon, field, gold, and weave a story about what's coming. Historians still argue whether this was spiritual insight or clever psychology. Some say the dream books tapped into Egypt's collective fears and hopes, like a cultural Rorschach test. Others think they were mostly priestly showmanship, giving people a sense of control over an unpredictable world. Either way, you're feeling the weight of it. The idea that your sleep could hold clues to tomorrow, like a puzzle only the gods could solve. Here's a light joke to ease you along. Why did the Egyptian dream of fish? Because even his subconscious was hooked on Nile cuisine. You smile, the Nile's murmur blending with the memory of festival drums, and sink deeper into the mat. The family around you is asleep, they're breathing a soft rhythm, and you're picturing yourself sharing your falcon dream over breakfast. The mother might nod sagely, suggesting a small offering of bread to Horus, while the kids giggle about their own dreams of talking ibises. It's a community affair, dreams binding you to each other and the divine, like threads in a cosmic tapestry. The room's dark now, save for that moonlight glow, and you're slipping closer to sleep, the idea of dream divination swirling in your mind. The Egyptians didn't just dream, they listened, treating every vision as a potential dispatch from the gods. You're wondering what you'll see tonight, maybe a falcon, maybe a river of stars. The mat creaks as you shift, the Nile's song a steady lullaby. It's humbling, this trust in sleep's hidden messages, and you're starting to feel it too, a quiet faith that the night holds answers if you're brave enough to dream them. As your eyes close, the stars outside seem to pulse, whispering secrets you'll only hear in sleep. You're still nestled on that familiar reed mat. The Nile's soft ripples a gentle hum in the background, the air thick with the scent of baked barley and the faint sweetness of festival honey cakes lingering from earlier. The moonlight spills through the small window, casting a silvery glow across the mud brick walls, and the family around you is deep in sleep, their breaths a quiet rhythm. But tonight, you're not just drifting off, you're stepping into the world of ancient Egyptian social classes, where your place in the pecking order shaped not just your day, but how you slept at night. From pharaohs to farmers, sleep was a mirror of status, and you're about to see how the haves and have-nots chase their dreams in very different ways. You shift on the mat, feeling its rough weave under your back,
and imagine the stark contrast between this humble home and the royal bedchamber we visited earlier. A mainstream historical fact, social hierarchy in ancient Egypt was rigid, with pharaohs at the top as living gods, followed by nobles, priests, artisans, and farmers, each with distinct lifestyles that extended to their bedtime routines. Here, in this mud brick house, your mat is simple, your blanket a single layer of linen, and the only luxury is the cool Nile breeze slipping through the window. But up in the palace, a pharaoh like Ramses II would be sprawled on an ebony bed, draped in fine linens, with servants fanning him with ostrich feathers. You're starting to see sleep as a status symbol. Same Nile, same stars, wildly different vibes. Here's a quirky tidbit. While commoners like your host family relied on clay headrests to keep cool and bug-free, wealthier Egyptians sometimes used alabaster ones, polished to a gleam and inscribed with protective spells. You glance at the wooden headrest under your neck, functional but no match for the elite's version, which might have had Bess's grinning face carved in gold. It's like comparing a budget mattress to a memory foam throne, and you're half jealous, half amused. You're reminded of that bronze mirror under the pharaoh's bed, bouncing back nightmares. Here, you've got a tower-it figurine by the hearth, doing the same job on a tighter budget. Status didn't just buy comfort, it bought divine swagger.
Picture yourself in a noble's house now, just for a moment. You're on a raised platform, the bed cushioned with layers of linen, a small table holding a golden cup of spiced wine. The room smells of myrrh, and a servant hums a soft chant to Ma'at, goddess of balance, ensuring your dreams stay harmonious. Back on your mat, it's just you, the reeds, and the Nile's murmur. But there's a cozy intimacy here the nobles might have envied. Historians still argue whether these differences in sleep setups reflected spiritual beliefs or just raw privilege. Some say the elite's lavish beds were about divine connection, sleep as a royal ritual, while others think it was pure flex, a way to show off even in the dark. You're leaning toward both, feeling the mat's simplicity and imagining the weight of a golden headrest. Here's a light joke to keep things soft. Why did the noble sleep so fancy? Because even his dreams had to wear a crown. You chuckle, the sound swallowed by the night, and pull your blanket closer. The family's routine, washing with Nile water, nibbling figs, praying to Bess, feels like a grounding ritual, tying them to the same gods the pharaoh worshipped, just without the bling. You're noticing how class shaped the details. The elite had private priests to bless their sleep, while here the mother mutters her own prayers, her voice as steady as any temple chant. It's a reminder that sleep, like life, was a shared need, but the wrapping changed with your rank. The room's quiet now, the moonlight fading as clouds drift across the sky. You're sinking deeper, the mat creaking softly, the Nile's song a steady pulse. The Egyptians, from top to bottom, saw sleep as a sacred act, but status painted it in different colors, gold for the pharaoh, clay for the farmer. You're feeling the warmth of this simple setup, the family's faith in their gods, a kind of wealth no palace could buy. As your eyes flutter shut, you're drifting off, the line between noble and commoner blurring in the dark, carried by the river's endless flow, into a dream where status doesn't matter, just the stars above.
You're still sprawled on that familiar reed mat, the Nile's soft whispers curling through the night air, scented with the faint earthiness of mud brick walls and the lingering sweetness of figs from earlier. The family around you is deep in sleep, their breaths a gentle rhythm, and the moonlight casts a silvery glow through the small window, painting shadows that dance like silent guardians. Tonight, you're diving into the practical side of ancient Egyptian sleep, the tools they used to make rest not just possible, but comfortable, from pillows to beds crafted with care. These weren't just objects, they were part of a nightly ritual, blending function with a touch of divine protection. And you're about to feel how they shaped a good night's rest. You shift on the mat, feeling its woven reeds press into your back, and your head rests on a curved wooden headrest, its smooth surface cool against your neck. A mainstream historical fact: Egyptians used headrests, often made of wood or stone, to support the neck during sleep, keeping the head elevated to stay cool and deter insects in the warm Nile Valley. You're getting used to this one, though it's a far cry from your modern pillow. It's sturdy, carved with simple lines, and you can imagine the family's father whittling it by lamplight, maybe muttering a prayer to Bess for good measure. It's not plush, but it does the job, lifting your head just enough to catch the breeze slipping through the window. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some headrests were decorated with tiny carvings of animals, like crocodiles or falcons, believed to guard against nightmares. You squint at yours in the dim light, spotting a faint outline of a lotus flower etched into the wood. A nod to renewal, maybe? Or just someone's artistic flair. It's a charming touch, like a little wink from the craftsman. And it reminds you of that alabaster headrest in the pharaoh's bedchamber, all polished and gilded. This one's humbler, but it's got heart, and you're starting to appreciate its no-nonsense vibe. You're picturing the family saving up for this, trading a few loaves of bread for a neighbor's handiwork. Now, let's talk beds. You're on a simple platform here, just a low frame of wood or packed earth, topped with layers of reeds and a linen sheet. In wealthier homes, beds were fancier. Think ebony frames with woven leather strips, like a proto-mattress that screamed status. You're imagining yourself in one of those, the leather creaking under your weight, a soft linen canopy keeping out the bugs. Historians still argue whether these sleep setups were about comfort or ritual significance. Some say the elevated beds and headrests mimicked divine thrones, linking sleep to the gods. Others think it was pure practicality. Stay off the floor, avoid the scorpions. You're betting it's both, feeling the mat's grounding simplicity while dreaming of that noble's cushy setup. Here's a light joke to keep the mood soft. Why did the Egyptian love their headrest? Because it kept their dreams from crawling away. You smile, the Nile's murmur blending with the thought, and adjust your position, the headrest's curve oddly comforting now. The family's sleeping area is tidy, mats rolled up by day, unrolled at night, with a small clay jar of water nearby for midnight sips. It's a far cry from the pharaoh's ostrich feather fans, but there's a quiet efficiency here, every tool serving a purpose. You're noticing the linen sheet, thin but smooth, probably woven by the mother's deft hands, a labor of love that feels like a hug from the past. The room's still now, the moonlight fading as a cloud drifts by, leaving only the Nile's steady song. You're sinking deeper, the headrest cradling your neck, the mat a familiar friend. The Egyptians crafted their sleep with care. Wood, reeds, linen, all working together to make the night a sanctuary. You're feeling it now, the way these tools ground you, tying you to a civilization that saw sleep as both practical and sacred. As your eyes close, the lotus carving on your headrest seems to glow, a tiny promise of renewal, and you're drifting off, carried by the river's flow into a dream where comfort is king. You're still sprawled on that familiar reed mat, the Nile's gentle ripples a soothing hum in the background, the air carrying the faint scent of reeds and the earthy warmth of the mud brick walls around you. The family's soft snores blend with the night's quiet pulse, and the moonlight through the small window casts a silvery sheen, illuminating a small clay amulet tucked near your headrest. Tonight, you're diving into the world of ancient Egyptian nighttime fears and the charms they used to keep them at bay. These weren't just trinkets, they were spiritual shields, crafted to protect sleepers from the unseen terrors lurking in the dark. You're about to feel the weight of those fears and the comfort of the charms that tamed them. You shift on the mat, the woven reeds creaking softly, and pick up the amulet, its cool surface smooth under your fingers. It's shaped like an ankh, the cross of life, with a tiny eye of Horus etched into it. A mainstream historical fact: Egyptians wore or placed amulets near their sleeping areas to ward off evil spirits and nightmares, believing these objects carried divine power. This one feels like a talisman of safety, and you can imagine the family's mother tying it with a linen cord, whispering a prayer to Horus for protection. The night's dangers weren't just physical, scorpions or thieves, but spiritual, with demons and restless ghosts thought to prowl when the sun god Ra was away. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Egyptians slept with amulets shaped like frogs, linked to Heket, the goddess of fertility and rebirth, to guard against malevolent dreams. You spot one on a shelf, its green glazed surface glinting in the moonlight. And it's almost comical. A frog is your spiritual bodyguard? But it makes sense in a world where the Nile's creatures were sacred, and you're reminded of that Taweret figurine by the hearth, another animal protector. You're tempted to clutch the Ankh amulet closer, its weight a small but solid reassurance against the dark's unknowns, like a divine version of a nightlight. The family's asleep, but the night feels alive with unseen eyes. Egyptians feared spirits called Akh, restless souls who could slip into dreams and cause chaos. You're imagining a priest's warning: sleep without protection, and an Akh might steal your breath or twist your dreams into nightmares. Historians still argue whether these fears were rooted in religion or psychology. Some say amulets were a way to calm anxious minds, a placebo wrapped in faith. Others believe Egyptians genuinely saw the night as a battleground, with charms as their weapons. You're leaning toward both, feeling the Ankh's cool weight and the Nile's steady murmur, which seems to promise safety if you trust in it. Here's a light joke to ease the mood. Why did the Egyptians sleep with a frog amulet? Because even demons can't resist a good croak. You smile, the mat shifting under you, and tuck the amulet under your headrest, its presence grounding you. The family's routine, prayers to Bes, a splash of Nile water, now this amulet, feels like layers of armor against the night's fears. You're noticing how the mother placed similar charms near the kids' mats, tiny ankhs and scarabs, ensuring their dreams stay safe. It's a small act, but it carries the weight of a civilization's belief in the power of sleep to connect or endanger the soul. The room's quiet now, the moonlight softening as clouds drift across the sky. You're sinking deeper, the Ankh amulet a silent guardian, the Nile's song a steady lullaby. The Egyptians didn't just fear the dark, they faced it, with charms, faith, and a stubborn trust in their gods. You're feeling it too, the comfort of that small clay ankh, tying you to a world where even the smallest object could hold back the night's terrors. As your eyes flutter shut, the frog amulet seems to wink in the shadows, and you're drifting off, carried by the river's flow into a dream where fear has no place. You're still lying on that familiar reed mat. The Nile's gentle ripples, a constant soothing hum, blending with the faint scent of reeds and the earthy warmth of the mud brick walls. The family around you is deep in sleep, their breaths a soft rhythm, and the moonlight through the small window casts a fading glow, as if the night itself is easing you toward dreams. Tonight, you're reflecting on the legacy of ancient Egyptian sleep practices, how their rituals, beliefs, and tools have rippled through time, touching even our modern quest for rest. From lullabies to amulets, these folks crafted a nighttime world that feels both distant and strangely familiar. And you're about to see how their wisdom still whispers to us under the same stars. You shift on the mat, the woven reeds creaking softly, the Ankh amulet from last section still tucked near your headrest, its cool weight a quiet anchor. A mainstream historical fact: ancient Egyptian sleep practices, like their use of herbal remedies and protective rituals, influenced later cultures, from Greek medicine to modern aromatherapy. You're thinking of that lotus tea we sipped earlier, its floral warmth a distant cousin to today's chamomile blends. The Egyptians didn't have sleep labs, but they knew a thing or two about calming the mind. Herbs, prayers, and stories all working together to make the night a sanctuary. You're feeling it now, the way this simple mat, this humble room, carries centuries of intention. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some scholars believe the Egyptian habit of aligning beds with the pole star inspired later feng shui practices in other cultures, a cosmic nod to orienting sleep for harmony. You glance at your headrest, remembering that starry alignment we explored, and smile at the thought of ancient Egyptians as the original interior designers of the soul. It's a stretch, but it's charming, like that frog amulet winking at you last section, another small thread tying their world to ours. You're picturing a modern sleep guru, all crystals and essential oils, unknowingly echoing the priests who burned myrrh in dream temples.
The legacy isn't just in tools or herbs, it's in the mindset. You're sinking deeper into the mat, the Nile's murmur a steady pulse, and you're struck by how the Egyptians saw sleep as a sacred act, a nightly journey to the divine. Historians still argue whether their rituals were practical or purely spiritual. Did lotus tea really knock you out, or was it the faith in its power? Some say their practices were early science, others pure mysticism. But you're feeling both, the comfort of routine, the magic of belief. It's like how we dim the lights or play white noise today, chasing that same sense of safety they found in Bess's grin or a starry sky. Here's a light joke to keep things soft. Why do we still love a good bedtime routine? Because even now, we're just Egyptians dreaming under fancier blankets. You chuckle, the sound fading into the night, and pull your linen sheet closer. The family's rituals, lullabies, amulets, starlit prayers, feel like gifts passed down through time. Reminders that rest is more than closing your eyes. You're noticing how the mother's humming, the father's quiet prayers, echo in modern bedtime stories or whispered goodnights. The Nile song ties it all together, a thread from their world to yours, carrying you towards sleep with the same gentle pull. The room is hushed now, the moonlight softening to a faint, silvery whisper. The Nile's rhythm slower, deeper, like the breath of the earth itself. You're sinking into the mat, its familiar creaks a quiet lullaby, the Ankh amulet a steady weight by your side. The Egyptians' legacy wraps around you, not just in the tools, the headrest, the linen, the herbal teas, but in the way they honored sleep as a sacred space, a moment to touch the divine. You're feeling it, that gentle pull toward rest, as if the river itself is rocking you, its waters carrying away the day's weight, leaving only calm.
Your eyes are heavy, the stars outside blurring into a soft, glowing haze. The family's breaths fade into the background, blending with the cricket's hum, the distant splash of a fish in the Nile. You're thinking of those lullabies, the ones that soothed pharaohs and farmers alike, their melodies echoing in the quiet rituals we still cling to. Bedtime stories, a favorite blanket, the hum of a fan. The Egyptians knew something we're still learning. Sleep isn't just rest, it's a journey, a chance to reset, to dream, to meet the world anew. You're slipping deeper, the mat's texture fading, the amulet's presence a silent promise of safety. The night feels endless, but not heavy, just vast, like the sky above, dotted with stars that have watched over countless sleepers. You're imagining Bez, his goofy grin guarding your dreams, or Taweret, her hippo heft standing sentinel by the hearth. The Nile's song is softer now, a whisper that weaves through your thoughts, carrying memories of lotus tea, festival drums, starry alignments. It's all part of you now, this ancient rhythm, this trust in the night's embrace. Your breath slow, matching the river's flow, and the world feels gentle, safe, as if the gods themselves are tucking you in. You're almost gone, the room a blur of shadows and starlight, the Nile's murmur a final soothing note. The Egyptians' gift was this, a way to make sleep a ritual, a moment of connection to the gods, the cosmos, each other. You're carrying that with you into dreams where falcons soar and rivers sing, where the night holds no fear, only peace. Let the stars guide you, let the river rock you, let the legacy of ancient Egypt carry you into a sleep as deep and endless as the Nile itself.